said you like to ask people what keeps them up at night, right? Can you start with your perspective on workplace and these key questions? I'd like to hear from you, John, after that.
Well, I think it really was keeping contractors and a lot of employers in other industries as well awake at night, wondering how they were going to fill all the jobs that they had on their to-do list. And that's probably why that figure I mentioned earlier was so large of the backlog of projects, is because they just didn't have enough employees to get to it. In January, the Bureau of Business and Economic Research put out a stat that said 63% of high school seniors said they would not take a job in the construction industry even if it paid $100,000 a year. Wow. And people are...
They should try sitting at a desk for 25 years.
Well, that's what they're going to get if they don't want that, right? So my takeaway from that was, that's awesome. We just eliminated 63% of the people who might be in the wrong career or vocation. So how do we find the 38% and go after them from a contracting perspective? So now the paradigm shift that's come about today is that maybe there's some contraction going on. Maybe there's somebody who is analyzing a little bit more. Do we need one more employee or one less employee? Do we let the projects, as I've said, feather out a little bit, or do we try to change that? And although this isn't a huge impact on the construction industry, what is the whole work from home phenomenon going to result in? It's probably, in the big cities, it's probably going to result in fewer office buildings being built. It may result in cubicle farms coming back and people working in cubicles. But Morning Brew did a survey last week, and they came back and they said 60% of the people who have an opportunity to work from home would love to continue that opportunity. So there's a huge, we're trying to build these big monoliths in towns, and maybe that's not what's going to happen. I mean, again, we're talking Montana here, so that clearly isn't a huge factor, but I mean, an office building, whether it's 60 floors or 2 floors, is still an impact of one way or another.
Sure.
Last thing I want to throw out on this is I saw another thing that this week the Pittsburgh airport is in the middle of just getting ready to start on a big expansion and remodel, and they called a timeout, and they're totally redesigning it based on all the COVID standards and what we think we're going to be needing in the future. So got to be nimble to be in the construction industry, and got to be creative and out in front of some of these things too. So
yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. And
John, you were in the excavating business before COVID. Is it safe to assume you're still in the excavating business?
Still in the excavating business, but it definitely has changed the excavating business. I agree with David how it's going to change the world as far as how it impacts construction, but I'll talk more about the excavation, kind of zeroing in on that. One thing that's the same is that what keeps me up at night is the safety of the employees. I mean, we're constantly putting our employees in difficult situations. We're always having to look at how do we keep that employee safe. If they're going into a trench box, safety. If they're going up ladders, ladder safety. So this is just a new, how do we keep our employees safe in this situation? So to some degree, I think the construction world is able to handle that better because we think of it every day. So
right.
By keeping that in our culture and reminding employees that this isn't necessarily something new as far as how we have to focus on it every day. It's just a new safety issue we have to deal with. It's helped employees kind of stay within what we're good at, and that is how do we stay safe. But it definitely impacts in how we do the work. Just like before, people could just jump into a trench without a trench box. When we started using trench boxes, we had to rethink how our processes work, how we do certain jobs. And so as we look at now, we have to keep our employees separate by 6 feet or wear face mask protect or some sort of barrier. How does that change? How is it going to change when we get into the hot weather? It's kind of nice now, people are fine, but
Yeah.
Are they to wear face masks? And you really can't, and it's a challenge we have. You can't maintain 6 feet of separation
Right.
and constant work and get in trench boxes. So how do we protect our employees under those scenarios? And so that's what we've been working on probably the most is that change. And the processes have to change to continue to be the excavation company, continue to do the work we've been doing, but under the new set of safety standards that we're going to have to practice. And I don't think it's just in the short term. I think, these safety practices are going to continue on for quite some time.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
I would agree. It's definitely a 9/11 type moment. There are certainly people, potentially on this webinar that don't remember going to the airport before 9/11, and what that used to be like versus what it's like today. So I definitely think it has lasting changes. In terms of the office spaces and buildings and things along those lines, people, there's a lot of people too, if you survey them, that are yearning, to get back to the office and around their peers, and to be in that professional setting. And there's so many different factors, that those immeasurables of what you learn and gain, from being in an office. And I know it's a kind of a buzzword now around remote work, but I definitely think organizations need to be thinking about not so much remote work, but flexible work. And if you really keep that as kind of your guiding light, all of those factors were there anyway before COVID, given the demands on families with 2 working parents, all the different things that we're trying to get done in our lives, mobility. People just need that flexibility. So strongly encourage contractors, and as they're working with the developers and all those types of things, to just keep that flexibility is kind of your main